This video is a compilation of my 3-chapter story Burning Feathers, more or less to hype up the bonus chapter that I'll be writing soon. So, stay tuned for that. Enjoy. Rank 2. That was something you couldn't believe. It was magical. Not only was he your first gig as an upcoming hero manager, but also he was such a nice guy. If things would keep going like they are now, you'd definitely extend your contracts with him. You just hoped you were doing a good enough job for him to want to stay with you. Takami hired you a year ago, after you got rid of his previous manager for reasons he refused to tell you. You were up and coming just like him, and yet charmed you the moment you two had first eye contact. With your help, support, and ideas, you had given him a blueprint to become one of the best. But it would become number 2 as this quickly. Admittedly, it wasn't your exceptional management skills, but more the retirement of the previous number 1 hero All Might. But the fact alone that your guidance prevented him from drifting down in the hero ranking was big enough for you. In fact, not just you. A magazine for business class heroes like you had wanted to interview you since you had gotten the job under Takami. And even during the festivities, while HAWKS was still on stage, journalists were coming after the both of you. You gave them quick and short answers, just enough for them to be satisfied, but not enough to send them running. To you, it was clear the path to the number 1 was layered down not just by heroics, but also how the media portrayed said heroics. Saving children from a burning building? Make sure that the right one-liners are delivered to the media. And instantly, the normies watching forgot the fact that firefighters, police, and other heroes were even present. That's how All Might did it. It was your goal to emulate the media coverage of the former number 1 hero. He had been so legendary that him simply hitting a giant puddle of slime made news for an entire day. After the situation calmed down to the point where you could safely order them to leave, you turned around, walking backstage into the VIP lounge reserved for HAWKS. He was dozing off in one of the black leather couches they had provided. But upon hearing you close the door, his ears twitched, and he turned to look at you. He had a wide smile on his face. Are the vultures satisfied? You walked over to the couch in front of his and sat down. With your legs crossed, smiling, you said, "Yes, very satisfied." He sighed loudly and leaned further back into the recliner, putting both hands behind his back. "Did I ever tell you how much I hate this?" You giggled. "You did." He was quiet for a moment, then looked to his right. Some wine." He nodded into the direction of an ice-filled bucket that you just now noticed standing right next to him. "I don't drink on the job." He blinked. "That's very responsible, but..." He furrowed his brows. You're actually serious?" You nodded, and he sighed again. Well, I tried." You tilted your head. "Tried what?" He shrugged. "Less you know, the better," he said jokingly. Understanding it was one of his weird mannerisms, you ignored the creepy implications. His gaze focused on you. He reached for the bottle and opened it, as if to demonstrate that he didn't tamper with the drink. He took a deep swig and put the wine back. Smiling, he said, "Now that we're here, and casual, what is your favorite drink anyways?" You bit your lower lip. It's stupid. you said and blushed. Normally, whenever he tried to switch the subject to something not business-related, you were able to talk your way out, as there were other people usually present. Now that you thought about it, the amount of times you'd actually spent with the pro hero alone were rather brief. Come to think of it, why did he need you in the first place? He improvises public speeches, and his one-liners were even, though sometimes inappropriate, still on point. Yes, why did he need you? You blinked. Oh, yes, drink, you thought, and blushed. HAWKS was looking at you with an amused grin. I like sex on the beach, okay? He chuckled. Remind me what's in that again. Shrugging, you replied, cranberry, nectar mixed with vodka, peach liquor, and orange juice. You blushed. Why was he asking you all that? You look confused, he said with a confident smirk as he stood up and began walking back and forth. A feeling of unease overcame you. Did I do something wrong? He shrugged. I'm number 2? You got the vultures off my back? Or should I say, off my wings? He winked. So, no, not really. Suddenly he was behind you and you slowly got out of your chair. Your heart beating faster. What, is this about then? Within 2 steps he was right up your face. I just wanted to thank you. He spoke softly. Thank me? Then why was he acting so suspicious? And I wanted to tell you something. He kept pushing further into your personal space, forcing you to take steps behind you. Tell me what? You stuttered as a bead of sweat ran down your forehead. You had to admit, when you first got this job you were overjoyed. Not only because, at the time, the number 3 hero was interested in you to begin with, but also because you were completely crushing on him. In a way, you had been glad that your private moments were so far between. It kept you from fangirling. You hit a wall behind you and he put his elbows above your head, leaning in close to your face. I don't need you, he whispered. I don't need anyone, really. He paused, and your blush intensified. Well, what I mean is, I don't need a babysitter. He shrugged. Sure, I hate dealing with the press, but that's manageable. You gulped. What was happening? Or more, why was happening? HAWKS licked his lips seductively. From the moment I saw you, I wanted you on my team. Simply because I wanted to preposition myself. Your eyes widened. I find you smoking hot. He tilted his head almost mockingly. And I wanna fuck your brains out. Your blush got worse. It almost felt like you had a fever. Why? No. Your stutters were charming him even more. Was this why he hired you? To be his personal little chew toy? Almost as if he was reading your mind, he continued, by dramatically turning away from you. But alas, if you don't want to, there's nothing I can do. He made a pose similar to that of an anime character during a moment of tragedy, which was only made more ridiculous and borderline comedic by him flapping his wings to underline the melodramatic scene. No, Immediately he was back up in your face. Yes? I was your biggest fan before I took this job, you muttered. And, I mean... You sighed. Is it a little hot in here? You gasped. His eyes turned to slits as he grinned smugly at you. I like you too, you said, and his smile widened. So, you wouldn't mind if I... HAWKS whispered as his face approached yours at a painfully slow speed. It was obvious to you that he wanted to tease you to the point of a complete meltdown. But if he wanted that, he underestimated your patience. You remained still, only able to hear his even breaths, and your erratic, hitched yelps and running heartbeat. Finally, your faces collided. Pressing together in a heated exchange of passion, you could taste your shared breaths, feel the thud of your combined heartbeats. His lips tasted like the wine he had just drunk mere minutes ago as his tongue casually parted your lips. As a dizzying feeling clouded your brain and your eyes rolled back. Your heartbeat reached a new height upon feeling his warm hands exploring your body. You were wearing a rather slim business casual suit. Initially you had wondered why he wanted you to wear it. It was just enough for the public to not be distracted, but still short and tight enough for a pervert like him to find enjoyment in. Your legs felt like jelly, and you felt his tongue snake deeper into your mouth, and one of his curious hands vanished under your skirt. You fell into him. HAWKS expected something like that, but you were always a little bit on the lighter side of things. He caught you in his strong arms, holding you like a freshly married bride, and you hid your face behind your hands, squealing and squirming, unable to process what was happening to you. Not that you minded, of course. Having a guy like him, not only as a client, but also as a boyfriend, was definitely something that would go well with the carefree stick to the press. So, was it really that selfish of you to accept his temptations? You hated everything and everyone. After HAWKS hadn't been returning your calls for a few days and completely failed to attempt some of your schedules, you suddenly had been drowned in paperwork regarding things he was doing with the #1 hero endeavor, and what were apparently weird moments of absence in his agency. If it wasn't for your secret relationship with him, you would have quit and found a new hero to take care of. But this was nothing compared to what was about to come. You were brooding over a press release regarding some advertising deal for a German energy drink brand called Panzerkraft. The company even had been so gracious to give you a few samples. The drink tasted very artificial, but you yourself liked that. Judging by the references, the company was already advertised by Europe's #1 hero agency Schicksal, so it somewhat felt like an honor that they wanted HAWKS to represent them in the Far East. Should you force him to take the deal? You were about to take your phone and call him, but just then the titular hero barged into your office. "Hey there!" he shouted happily. "I got a surprise for you." You blinked. "Okay?" you asked cautiously. "It's more work!" He shouted and raised both hands. You made a noise as you tried to suppress your anxiety. But, he said, you won't be doing it here. I'll explain everything on the way there. Instantly he took your hand and you blushed. A couple of minutes later you found yourself inside his agency-owned car. He was driving with a very smug grin while you fidgeted in your seat. So, what is this about? You finally asked. He looked at you with a grin. I'm a double agent now! You know, like a spy! Cool, huh? Your left eye twitched in disbelief. Go on! You were about to cry. I'm right now working for the good guys, while making the bad guys think I'm one of them. You nodded cautiously. So I talked with the higher-ups, and they gave me the okay that you're good for the job too. You broke out in a cold sweat after hearing his next words. Which means from now on you'll be spending half your time with me at the agency, and the other half we will spend with the League of Villains. Why me? You shouted, earning you a mocking glance. 'Cause you're my girlfriend, and I love you, and I can't lie to you. Once again your left eye twitched in anger and disappointment. Sure, this was important, but you would have accepted this if his tone was different. But it wasn't. Don't worry, I'm just gonna introduce you to the guys, and then do some scheduling stuff, so it's less obvious when I hang out with them, got it? You whimpered. Is it too late for me to quit? His grin widened. After I told you all this? Definitely not. Why was he doing this to you? You were sat down in front of a black-haired, scarred man who introduced himself as Dabi. Your hero boyfriend loosely set up some paperwork on the tiny table in front of you and simply said, "Have fun, you two," before leaving. You were alone in the Dragon's Den, the current base of the League of Villains, a very serial killer-esque looking multi-floored log cabin in the woods. The place, however, didn't look as bad as you thought. It was clean-ish. A few loose trash scraps lying about, but no bloodstains, luckily. In the corner of the large room you were in stood a bar with an assortment of alcohol. It was also the most modern-looking part in the room. A sad little light bulb hung above the table you were sitting in front of. Dabi had taken up a mockingly relaxed pose on the couch behind the table, and was staring at you with eyes that gleamed with sadistic glee. Suddenly he spoke. "We're all friends here." His words hit you like a knife. "Why are you so tense?" His lips perked up into a smile, like he was looking at a juicy steak. "Go on. Do your job." You turned your attention to the paperwork HAWKS had packed for you. It was all the files and paper you had just worked on in the agency, but now they were completely disorganized. You broke out into a cold sweat as you began sorting them. This table was much smaller than the one at the agency and required you to lean over it. You could practically feel his gaze over your cleavage. "You suck at this," he said. You ignored him. Another few minutes passed, with you desperately trying to work through these papers. A real manager would have finished this by now. Why was this guy taking on the role of your inner voice? You already had an inner voice. You didn't need him to add on that. A good manager could deal with this. He continued these jabs until finally you gathered enough courage to glance at him. He was chewing on one of his fingernails with a very bored expression. This was suddenly interrupted by a door flying open and a white-haired man with very dry skin entered. He stepped lightly into the room like a ghost. Dabi didn't pay him much attention. but you felt like you were sitting on hot coals.
And who is that little bird?
The ghost hissed as he approached you. Manager of HAWKS, said Dabi with disinterest. The man now approached and stopped right next to you. His eyes darted over you, occasionally stopping to turn their attention to Dabi, who was still just nibbling on his scarred fingers.
I don't trust this one.
Immediately Dabi's ears twitched. Oh, really now? Do you trust anyone?
We should kill her before she does anything stupid,
said the other. Your eyes widened in fear as the white-haired man leaned over the couch's armrest, his gloved hands reaching for your throat. Panicking, you looked over at Dabi as strong hands wrapped around your windpipe. You gurgled and gasped for air as your own quickly grabbed his arms, desperately trying to pull away. The first thing you felt was a feeling similar to that of your eyeballs popping out of their sockets. Then your head began to spin. You were so casual about this. Your heart began to race, wasting precious air. You clawed his arms and used that last breath of yours to scream for help, but only a sick gurgle escaped your lips. Stars appeared in your vision, and Dabi chuckled. You actually killing her, Tomura?
Whatever,
was the man's only response. You felt your senses becoming dull, and the whole world felt as if it slowed down. The only thing you could hear now was your slowing heartbeat. And then, the pressure on your throat was suddenly gone. Instinctively, you took in as much air as you could, only to ironically choke on it and cough. Your entire body was rushing with adrenaline, and the pain suddenly surged through you as you fell off the sofa onto the hard wooden floor. Yet all you could think of was trying to calm your breathing. Your throat hurt, and every little muscle movement sent waves of burning pain throughout your entire being. And yet still you were pathetically coughing, until one singular wave of air made its way down into your lungs. With quick, panicked breaths, you were lying on your back, your vision slowly becoming more clear. Had Tomura decided you weren't worth it after all? When your vision became more clear, you looked towards the person standing above you. It was Dabi. The man held you up on your feet before pushing you back on the couch. As he proceeded to sit down next to you, a single question was on your mind.
Did you save me?
You croaked. Every word that left you stung like 1,000 needles. He shrugged. Yeah. Then he smirked. Told the marks were good men, and him being mad could ruin this entire operation. Dabi chuckled. I did like those sounds you were making, though. You looked away and blushed as you rubbed over your throat. Dabi grinned and put one arm around your shoulder. I really like those sounds you're making. Your eyes filled with water as he continued. He made a sound similar to a scoff. You know, where I come from, we thank people. You opened your mouth, but instantly a finger from his other hand was pressed onto your lips. No, I ain't talking about that. You had a very bad feeling about this. You know, maybe you aren't that useless after all. Why was he praising you now? His head moved closer to yours. Why don't you ditch that bird brain of yours and become one of the bad guys? With a shaking hand, you pressed against his chest to get him off of you, but he was stronger.
I can't,
You wanted to say that you loved HAWKS, but Dabi interrupted you. Just a kiss. As a thanks for saving your life. Nothing more, nothing less. You blink perplexed. Just a simple kiss? You could do that. You barely had any time upon nodding at his request before his scarred lips aggressively pressed onto yours. He was overpowering. Dabi was ravenous, greedily forced open your mouth as he plunged his tongue into you. Again you pushed against him, but in return he just threw himself on top of you. Vomit-inducing slurping sounds filled your ears as he began to hungrily suckle your insides. Your eyes rolled back as you were overwhelmed with fear. And then... slowly your eyes moved towards the noise. It was a phone, held up by his left hand. Dabi retrieved your mouth as he wiped away the spit on his mouth. And gotcha, you whimpered. So, little fuckmeat, what are you willing to do for me to not send this to your little pigeon? Your heart was racing. Ever since HAWKS had put you into the League of Villains, you were living a double life that you were not okay with. For one, the ideals of the League of Villains were far removed from your own. And now that the League assimilated this strange terrorist organization, the Meta Liberation Army, and formed the Supernatural Liberation Front, or however they called it, you lived in constant fear of any intervention, that you may be put in the crossfire. But that wasn't even the worst thing to happen to you. The worst thing was Dabi, a villain that had managed to blackmail you, and like an immature teen you acted accordingly. Instead of doing what you should be doing. Tell HAWKS about it. You forced yourself to fulfill every order the villain gave you. That's why you were right now dressed up in a skimpy maid dress, while he sat before you with his legs spread wide, drinking from a cocktail he had forced you to make. Your drinks still taste like sewage, he growled before throwing the glass against the wall. Go on, clean that shit up. Yes. You paused, feeling revolted. Master. Saying that made your stomach turn. How long could you handle this? Wait, no. The fact that you were cleaning up the shattered glass and puddle of alcohol, this was a sign that you weren't handling it. You weren't handling this. Internally you broke out into tears, while on the outside you just smiled painfully. Crying, yes, that's what he truly wanted from you, and that was a pleasure you wouldn't give to him. With a pounding heart you got back on your feet, and turned to dispose of the glass shards. Suddenly he was behind you, rubbing his greedy hands over your chest and stomach. Once again disgust filled your gut, as his fingers danced across your breasts. Aren't you an eager little bunny? You pressed your lips together, and with your teeth formed the words, "Stop calling me young bunny." His hands went further down, cupping your shame as they slowly rubbed over it. You closed your eyes, refusing the pleasure signals your body was giving you. The thought alone that you may actually be enjoying this was something that had started happening more often now, but you didn't want to admit it. Dabi, you groaned. We can't. HAWKS may be back at any time. How were his hands so skilled? You moaned into his touch, and your back arced into him, Stop, you begged. You're like liquid. Thought your boring office job makes your body go stiff. He placed his head on your shoulder. How about this? His hands slid up your body before once again returning to your breasts, aggressively fondling them. He chuckled. You like this, don't you? He groaned into your ear. Maybe I should... Suddenly the door to the room got kicked open. Everyone miss me? Shouted a familiar voice. You heard 2 footsteps, a gasp, and then a disappointed chuckle. Dabi turned around while you hid your face in shame. My own manager. You broke out into tears while Dabi just growled. I thought I could go further tonight. Further? You thought in disbelief. HAWKS stepped further into the room, arms crossed. May I have my manager back for 10 minutes? He hissed. Dabi pushed you into the hero. Knock yourself out. He laughed while the other angrily grabbed your arm. You're hurting me, you whined, while the winged man dragged you outside. However, once the door was closed and he pushed you into a janitor's closet next to the room you had been in, joining forces with the terrorists really upgraded the villain's hideout. His demeanor changed. Okay, first things first. You blinked. He sounded a little desperate. Is he bigger than me? Your mind could not comprehend the question. You know, his dick. A confused noise escaped you. Was he seriously asking you that? HAWKS' hand slapped onto your shoulders, sending a tremor throughout your entire being before quickly moving up to your cheeks. His touch was so gentle, especially in comparison to what Dabi did to you. I need to know. Your lips quivered before you finally said, you and him are about the same size. HAWKS blinked. And? Your eyes moved away from his face. I guess yours is maybe a bit bigger, but also maybe his has a bit more, girth. The number 2 hero groaned and rubbed a hand over his face. You couldn't tell if he was disappointed or relieved. Why are you asking me that? Came your question, but he ignored it. But, I'm better, right? You blinked. Otherwise, you wouldn't be wearing that for him, right? Was he serious? He blackmailed me. HAWKS sighed. Now I feel like an idiot. He took a step away from you, hand under his chin. No. He paused. Oh yes, he shouted. This is actually really perfect. He jumped up, wrapping his arms tightly around you. This was probably the most affectionate he had ever been. You're such a blessing. I knew exactly why I hired you. I could kiss you right now. He paused. Actually, no. I will kiss you. Come here. Quickly you turned your head towards his and pecked your face like a horny high schooler. HAWKS? You asked as he continued. HAWKS! You got louder, and he stopped. Yes? What are you talking about? None of this is good. Also, I should have told you. He pointed his finger at you in an almost accusatory manner. But you didn't. Yes, but that may have been the best idea ever, he interrupted. You're genius. The best manager ever. What the hell was he talking about? Getting a League member to blackmail you on purpose so you have more reasons to stay with them to extract information. You blushed. Hard. And your lips perked up. Yeah. This idea is so great, I'm not even jealous. You joined his laughter, all by sounding much more nervous. I respect a woman that is willing to risk her love life for the greater good. He made a dramatic pose by putting his hands under his hips. Just your luck I got behind the ruse, right? This could have gone bad real quick. Then he blinked and sighed. Look. His tone suddenly completely shifted. I'm trying to help you. Sound less nervous, okay? He looked away. The mere fact alone they haven't fed me purposefully wrong information yet, or, well, haven't killed me, is proof alone that you haven't told them any information, and it has shown you're very loyal. He took your hands in his. Right now, he said, I love you more than I ever did, despite your little adultery. Hawks blinked before adding, just, he paused. Please tell me. Your heart jumped painfully. Who of us fucks better? It was a moment where you couldn't control your body. A split-second decision you had no control over. Your hand harshly slapped across his face. Immediately regretted it, of course. You sputtered apologies as he recovered from the blow, but he wasn't mad. Desperately he tried to calm you down, and when your mad ravings and sorries turned into sad rants, he shut you up by pressing his lips onto yours. You squeaked as he pushed you against the wall. His soft lips felt like the soft embrace of a childhood plush toy, long abandoned and found years later in a dusty yet cozy attic. Allowing his tongue passage into your mouth, it aggressively wiggled around inside you like a snake in heat. It made you groan and push back into him. And slowly he released you, a spit line connecting your mouths. Let's head back inside. By now, you thoroughly melted into him, that you didn't realize the implications of this sentence. You only said, yes. With your head in the clouds, you followed him back into the villain's room. Inside, Dabi was lying on the sofa, playing a game on his phone. He only side-glanced you and Hawks before saying, You done? Thought you'd kill her. As you can see, I didn't. He snapped back. You both sat on another sofa opposite to Dabi's. I want to ask you something, burnt boy. The villain chuckled. Call me that again, I turn you into an order of 9-piece chicken nuggets. The hero smirked. Fine, then I won't suggest it. Manager, you're fired. Suggest what? Interrupted Dabi, his curiosity getting the better of him. But your own heart had stopped for a moment. Did Hawks genuinely just almost fire you? The winged man leaned forward and rubbed his hands. I suggest we share her. Then he leaned back and slapped your shoulder painfully. I'm sure she won't mind. Dabi scoffed. And how are you gonna do that, you half-hearted Rick and Morty reference? The villain sighed. Actually, that's all better in my head. Yeah, sure, whatever. We need a maid. Toga's leaving behind blood she refuses to clean, and Spinner... Ugh. He's very unsanitary recently. You suppressed a sob. The League practically was printing money at this point. Didn't they have a maid? Or multiple? This was a big complex after all. Didn't realize the number 2 is such a... Hawks raised both hands on the fence. I'm not. I can promise you that. I'm just showing my loyalty to the League by giving you something. He made a dramatic pause. Something that I own. You fidgeted and blushed hard. Honestly, I was hoping for Tomura to be interested in her, but hey, this is fine too. Hawks shrugged. Now I still need her to do my paperwork, so can I have her on Mondays and Wednesdays? Oh, I also like to take the Sundays off, so can I have her then too? Do I get a say in this? In unison, both men said, "No!" You huddled into the sofa's armrest next to you. You didn't know what was worse. The things these men were doing to you, or what these things were doing to you mentally. Because you were starting to really enjoy this.